what they're doing for you and kind of how the preferences are helping you set up your QuickBooks, customize your homepage to get the things that you need, and customize your reports the way that you need them. The next note that I have, it's because I'm a nerd accountant again, guys. You're gonna like, when I understand a lot about her now, I'm gonna pull up the write checks window. So this is a sample company, okay? So the date in this sample company is December 15th of 2023. I know it might feel like winter outside today because June decided to get cold, but that is the date field on this check. So the note that I have, it says date plus or minus. You will notice in this date field, you have a calendar icon, and you can click on that calendar icon to change the date. But if you were in that date field and you have a 10 key pad on your keyboard, if you hit the plus key that's above the enter key, with every click, it adds 1 day to the date. So you don't have to actually take your hand off the keyboard. I mean, you can just click plus. You don't have to go grab the mouse, click the calendar, and then change the date, okay? So in any date field, if you click the plus, every click is a day forward, every minus sign is a date backward, or you can hold down the plus key and zoom forward, or hold down the minus key and move backward, okay? So that's the date thing. I like it because I like using a 10 key because that's kind of how I was trained with a computer, and I'm not the best typist in the world to go pick the numbers from up top, and I just am lazy and don't want to go grab the mouse. The other thing that's nice about QuickBooks, in any amount field, QuickBooks will do math calculations for you. So let's say you have a $500 bill that you have, but you only have to pay half of it right now. You key in 500 and you can click on the slash above the 8, which is divide, and put 2 and hit enter, and you automatically have $250. We don't have to grab a calculator. We don't have to reach over for our 10 key. You can do a math calculation in any amount field anywhere in QuickBooks. So if I have $500 and say I have to pay a double payment, I can hit the asterisk above the 9, which is multiplication. I hit the number 2 and I hit enter, and I automatically have $1,000. But let's say you've got several invoices from the same vendor and you're going to pay them in one check. I can type the first amount in, hit the plus key, type the second amount in, plus key, the third amount, let's say that that's it. I hit enter and there's my total. So as you notice as you're going along and adding it, it's like a little cash register tape. It's like the tape on your 10 key. It goes away. It doesn't come back. We're not able to pull it back, okay? But you can add things as you're going along. Once you get that total, you can click to the end of it. You can then divide it, do whatever. So you can add, subtract, multiply, and divide in any amount field in QuickBooks. Hopefully that saves you time, and it's a shortcut. Back in the day, again, I've been using this since the 90s, they called it Quick Math. Okay, that's back when I read the QuickBooks manual. So just so you know, the date field, the plus or minus key will add or subtract days in your math calculations. You can add, subtract, multiply, and divide in any amount field in your QuickBooks. Okay. Let me take a minute real quick. Nope, I'm not going to record this. On the back side or the second page of your handout, I want to make sure we cover this and time doesn't get away from us today. Backing up your QuickBooks data. As most of you know, I told you I am located in Joplin, Missouri. So we had the tornado in 2011. I work with a lot of small businesses, and I had a lot of small businesses who lost everything in the tornado. And the one thing we always talk about with QuickBooks is backing up your data. And make sure that your backup is not left with your computer because of natural disasters, because of fires, theft. Just don't leave the backup there. The backup is important because the backup is all of your data, which means you can take that backup, to another computer that has that year-end version of QuickBooks or newer and restore that data, and you're good to go. And you have all of your data. So backing up is important, and keeping that backup secure is very, very important as well. So I had clients that were in the tornado that lost everything, and the one client found her backup in the rubble of her business on day 4. And it rained every day. It rained the day of the tornado, and it rained every day after. And she got lucky. And I don't want you all to be lucky. It's great to be lucky. So if you win the lottery, I'll give you my address. But I need you to think about your data and keep that data secure. So I usually tell people, for the ladies, put it on a flash drive. That flash drive, then take it in your purse so you take it home. So at least it's not at the office. Or if you have a fireproof safe, lock it up in there. Keep that data. People ask me, you know, how often should I back up my data? And I don't want to be smart aleck, but how much data are you willing to lose? Okay. You're not really willing to lose any data. So I would say every time you use your QuickBooks or daily, make sure you back it up. It's super easy to back it up because you're going to go to File on the menu bar, and you're going to back up company and go through the steps, and QuickBooks will walk you through it. A lot of us in this day and age have cloud backups, and that's perfectly fine. But make sure you have a backup of your data, because we can lose our computer and all the paper along with it. We don't want to lose your data. I had another horror story with the tornado. I met a company who they lost their building, lost everything. Everything was paper files. They weren't using QuickBooks, and they had a fiscal year that ended on May 31st. And the tornado was May 22nd. So they lost literally a year's worth of data. And so then that's when they started with QuickBooks. So make sure you've got a flash drive or something. Make sure that that flash drive is also going to be secure, because you just don't want to lose your data. I've been through enough of that in my 27 years. It's not fun. It's not fun at all. The other thing is, once in a while, we see a pretty, what they call a GUI interface, the graphic user interface with QuickBooks. But behind the scenes, QuickBooks is literally like an Access database. It's literally just tables with names and numbers. It's not very pretty at all. Let's say that you have a computer glitch, or you have an electric surge or something as you're doing QuickBooks, and maybe one of your transactions doesn't actually get put in the box all the way where QuickBooks really wants it. And you may start getting some weird things with reports, or QuickBooks may give you just something odd that you're like, this is not the case. So if you ever need to troubleshoot QuickBooks, you would again go to File on the menu bar. You will go down to Utilities, and you'll do the utility that's called Verified Data. So QuickBooks will go through, and it will check all of the data in your file. So it's going to look through all the data and see if your data is good. If your data has an issue, it will tell you, and it will walk you through how to fix it. It actually fixes itself. So with this data we're using right now, QuickBooks detected no problems. But if it tells you that your data has an issue, it will walk you through the rebuild process. So it's just a matter of reading your screen. So I told you I've got over a decade, over a couple decades of using QuickBooks. I've only had one file that I've had to send off throughout the years back to QuickBooks for them to fix the data file. And it happened to be our university's foundation QuickBooks. At that time, again, back in the 90s, they had QuickBooks on the network. And at that time, it fought with another program on our network, and the file got corrupted. So the QuickBooks folks were able to fix it, and then the University Foundation at that point was able to get their own server and host QuickBooks, and had no problems after that. But like I say, if you ever get reports and you're like, this doesn't make sense, run the utility, file utilities, and verify your data. The bottom of this page is your help system and live community. So your help system can be found up on the menu bar on the far right under help, and you have the QuickBooks Desktop help. And you've also, once you are in the help system, if you don't find the answer that you need, it will send you to the live community. And it is a super resource. I usually will just Google what I'm needing to find, because people will ask me questions. I'll say, I don't know that. And they're like, but you know everything. No, I don't know everything. I've just been taught over the years how to use the QuickBooks lingo and how it words things to then be able to go and find the answer. So it's super, super helpful. Like I say, I would not recommend the help system back in the 90s, but today it's like my best friend. And it's still trying to come up right now. So I'm just going to hopefully go back to the home page and continue back to the first page. So your customer center and flowchart. So remember, QuickBooks is list driven. One of those lists that we have is our customer list. And we can get to our customer list from this customer button on the home page. And you can click there and it will bring up your customer center. So it tells us right now that we're at the customer center, and our customer we're looking at is Abercrombie, Christie. Okay, she's one of our customers. And I'll go down and I'll click on Robert Allard, and this customer center is rich with data and information. Okay, so with Robert, we can see right now that we are showing his balance details. So he has an invoice. That invoice is not paid because it shows that it's open. But let's go and change the show and let's see all of his transactions. Okay, he only has the one transaction. He has just the one invoice. Oh, I'm going to go change the date to all. And this is a sample company, so I don't expect a lot of data. But this is his history. So let's go down. Actually, let's go back up to Christy Abercrombie. This is great. She has lots and lots of history. Christy has payments, estimates, invoices, a check, a credit memo, a sales receipt, lots and lots of data. Right now, you see the balance is 0. And if we clicked and changed the show to balance details, we're going to see that her open balance is 0. Okay, so the customer center is rich with data. From here, you can launch to a quick report. If you click on the link on the right, and there's a quick report, and it will give us the data that we have with this customer. Again, I don't like to do reports with sample companies because the data doesn't mean anything to you or I. So if you are needing to customize any reports in QuickBooks, definitely send me an email and say, Lisa, can we pop on and do a Zoom? I want to create a custom report. There's more than one way to skin a cat to get to things in QuickBooks, and hopefully I'll be able to help you customize and get to exactly what you need with your customer. So all your customers, it's one of your lists, and it's a super important list because these are the people that we are selling our services or our products to. They're our customers. So we need to make sure that, of course, our data is set up properly, that we're tracking them properly. Now, this is a construction company. It's Sample Rockcastle Construction. So what we've done here, or what they've done, is that we have what's called a customer and job list. So with Christy Abercrombie, she is our customer, but we have a family room job, we have a kitchen job, and a remodeled bathroom. It's probably very important for us in the construction industry to have each of those jobs separate so that when we pull it, we can see what we did. It's also important because if we remodel a lot of kitchens for folks, we kind of have an idea of how to do our estimates and to just help the customer along, because we've done a lot of kitchens and the estimates are going to probably be pretty easy for us because we know about how many hours it would take out to rip out old cabinets and counters, put in new ones, you know, how much a feet per feet it's going to cost for cabinets, counters, that type of thing. So customer jobs is not necessary, but a lot of times it helps you just have more data and more data at your fingertips to go, okay, on the family room job, it looks like we didn't do a lot. We only invoiced for about $1,300. So let's look at the kitchen job. The kitchen job's only got one invoice for $5,000, and then the bathroom job's got a couple invoices. Looks like a little more expensive, around $7,600. But depending on what you need, this customer center, like I say, is going to be very rich in information. Now I'm going to close this customer center and get back to the home page. What does the flow of data look like with a customer? Okay, so we've got estimates turned on, but that can be turned off in preferences if we're not giving customers estimates. So the normal flow of data for this company is create an estimate. If the customer accepts the estimate, we would create an invoice. We would then tell the customer, this is what we plan to do for you. At some point, we're going to do that work, and we would follow the flow chart. We would receive a payment from the customer. It might be a partial payment, or it might be a payment in full. And then again, we need to follow the flow chart till it ends, and we would then record that deposit, or in essence, put that money in the bank. So that's the normal flow. We also have create sales receipts turned on. A sales receipt is when we make the sale and receive the payment all in one transaction. So let's say we sell light bulbs. We've got some fluorescent bulbs that we stock at the office. And the client comes in and is like, you know, I need 4 bulbs. So we can create the sales receipt. In essence, we make the sale and collect the money. That's what it assumes. So we've sold it and collected the money. That's what a sales receipt is. On the bottom side of this flow chart, statement charges, finance charges, and statements. Depending on your industry, you may need to do a statement charge. I learned long ago that a lawyer who is in practice will be issuing statement charges and statements because they don't collect sales tax. They normally only bill once a month. So statements with my clients that I work with, normally it's going to be that reminder statement to say, hey, you owe me money. And we need to figure out how you're going to pay me and when you're going to pay me. QuickBooks does have the preference to set up finance charges, but the important thing about finance charges is you must tell the customer when you start with them that if you don't pay in your certain period of time, then I'm going to issue you a finance charge, okay? But think about that flow chart that QuickBooks is showing us right here. QuickBooks is programmed, and I don't want to offend anybody on the call, but for years, I have told everybody that QuickBooks, she's a girl, and she's very fussy, and this is how she wants her data, and this is how she expects her data through this flow. So in this case, create an estimate. If they accept it, we create the invoice, later on receive the payment, and then record the deposit. That's the flow. You can do things out of order, but you've got to go make sure that you go back and link everything together once you have followed that flow. So very quickly, I want to go back to customers, and I'm going to double click on one of Christy Abercrombie's invoices. Okay, so here's an invoice that's dated December 10th for Christy Abercrombie that she paid on December 15th. Now the nice thing, I just showed you that flow chart where we invoice, receive payment, make a deposit. Well, this invoice says it's paid. So instead of working hard, we're going to do things the easy way. We've come back to the invoice, and you have tabs up here on the invoice. And this 4th tab doesn't look like a tab until you click on it. This 4th tab is called Reports. So if we click on the Reports tab and then click on the Transaction History icon, you will see that it shows us the payment. Now we can double click And here is the receive payment window that goes with this invoice. So Christy actually paid 2 invoices with 1 payment on December 15th. And if we want to take this further, we can click on the Reports tab on the Receive Payments window. We can click on Transaction History, and we will see those 2 invoices. Oh, I'm looking for the deposit because I didn't read my screen. I'm guilty already. Right here is the deposit to, and that deposited to our checking account. So depending on how your QuickBooks is set up, it may go to undeposited funds. This one went straight to checking because that's where we told that payment to go. But you'll notice these transactions are linked. So your invoice is linked to your payment, and the payment is linked to the invoice and also linked to the deposit. But in this case, we said deposit it straight to checking. So that's where it went. So if you want to know that history to look up to say, okay, what date did Christy pay? And if we had a check number, we would be able to look that up without having to go to our file drawer or without having to go to a lot of other difficulty in finding that data. So that's the nice thing about QuickBooks is your transactions are linked. If we have an invoice that's been paid, you're going to be able to find that payment by going back to the invoice, to the Reports tab, and then clicking on the transaction history icon to find that payment, and then you can double click, and it just so happens it was a large payment that paid 2 invoices in this case. So enough about customers. Let's go look at vendors. Okay, vendors in QuickBooks are people that we buy things from, okay? We may buy goods or services, but we purchase things from our vendors. They may be utility vendors, they may be subcontractors since we're in the contracting business, but a vendor, someone who supplies us a product or a service. So we have the electric company, we have the Cal Gas company, Daigle Lighting, we're in the construction business, so we buy lighting to install. Hamlin Metal, Hopkins Construction, so these are people that we buy things from. They're called vendors. Now the important thing to keep in mind is QuickBooks has its own nomenclature. So when you buy something from a vendor, the vendor sends us an invoice, but in QuickBooks, we call a vendor invoice a bill. So we would enter the bill from that vendor, and I'm going to go to the Enter Bills window, and I'm going to click on the previous icon to go back. So here's a bill we entered on December 15th for Thomas Kitchen and Bath. And it is an item. That means it's part of our item list. It's plumbing fixtures. We bought 60 of them at $9.75 each. It's going to a class, so we're doing some class tracking in this business. And so this business, their classes are new construction, remodel, and overhead. So that means this Rockcastle Construction, we can pull a profit and loss by class, and we'll see our income and expenses for new construction, for remodel, and for overhead. The other thing it allows us to do is it allows us to job cost, and these plumbing fixtures were purchased for Christy Abercrombie's bathroom remodel. So we can job cost so that we can track to see how we're doing on jobs just by adding it right here on the bill. It will then add it to our job cost report. So the flow here, we're going to enter a bill and we're going to pay a bill. The most common mistake with anybody using QuickBooks is that they will start up here, they will enter their bills, and then they will come down here in the banking area and write a check. And there is no invisible line or flow that connects enter bills and write checks. So the moral of the story here is if you enter a bill, you must pay a bill. So if you enter, you must pay a bill. Do you have to enter bills? You do not have to enter bills. You can just write checks. And on write checks, you can do class tracking and you can do your customer job to do that tracking as well. But again, the moral of the story, if you enter a bill, you must pay a bill. I recently had a client who was a little frustrated with herself because she needed to know how much she had paid a vendor. Well, she has been through an iteration of QuickBooks for Mac because she has a Mac computer. She then moved to QuickBooks Online, and her accountant recently told her, you will move to QuickBooks Desktop, hosted by Right Networks, which is the QuickBooks you're looking at today that won't work on her Mac, but it does through the internet, through Right Networks where it's hosted. And she found out that sometimes for this vendor, she entered a bill and sometimes she wrote a check. So unfortunately, she had to spend a lot of hours going through the report for the checks, going through the bills to try to figure out that she'd paid this vendor $2.5 million. And she needed that data, of course, the next day. And like I say, she was a little frustrated because we couldn't just snap and pull that information for her. So the vendor flow is a little bit easier unless you are tracking inventory. And if you're tracking inventory, your edit and preferences will be turned on. And I'll come back here to the preferences and turn that on. So you can see if you're tracking inventory in the flow, you could potentially have a purchase order. You're going to receive inventory, enter the bills against the inventory, and then you need to pay the bill. You will notice here in the vendor area, manage sales tax. If you are having to collect sales tax, again, you're going to have a preference, edit and preferences, and the preference for sales tax. And do you charge sales tax? Yes. You can have multiple sales tax items if you need them. You can put in your most common. Your items will need to be marked as taxable. You have to decide when do you owe the sales tax, and you have to decide how often you pay the sales tax. And once you have these things set up, when you go to the managed sales tax and you say, I need a sales tax liability report, we told it we're on the accrual basis on that preference, and we told it we pay monthly, so it defaults to the prior month, and it gives you a report with all the answers that you need to fill out your sales tax report. It gives you your total sales, which will be your gross sales. Then it will have adjustments on your sales tax coupon. That's for the non-taxable sales, to get you to your taxable sales times your rate. And hopefully you're just going to be within a few cents of your sales tax collected. The reason you're probably going to be off every time a few cents is because QuickBooks takes each and every individual sale and adds them up in here. When you do your coupon on the Department of Revenue site, it takes it as like one lump sum sale. So QuickBooks, it's got rounding going on each time with each transaction. When you do the sales tax coupon, you're just doing the one transaction. Had a client last week who called me. Her sales tax changed, I want to say the 1st of April. She didn't catch it in her system, and she's using a QuickBooks point of sale that's feeding in here. So she had 3 different sales tax rates and was kind of a mess. And she got called away. She pulled up the screen. She got called away with a phone call for a customer. She came back in the office. I said, I see you have a problem. And we talked about it. We went to the point of sale. We updated the sales tax rate to get her back here. And we told her, you know, call me the 1st of next month if things are still not working. But usually you can see immediately what's going on. Let's say that you have taxable sales showing up here under East Bayshore, and let's say you didn't have any sales, or that's a 0 rate, and you're like, what's going on? But usually it's just a matter of taking that moment to read the screen. So your flow of data in QuickBooks, it's predetermined, okay? We just have to know how to play the game. And I don't mean that QuickBooks is a game, but we just have to know what does the game plan look like for us, and to make sure that we know how this flow of data is going. Now, it's super, super important, and we haven't really hit on it, your lists that you develop. Your chart of accounts is one of those lists that we have. And your chart of accounts is going to first, if it's sorted in its normal sort order, your checking accounts or your bank accounts will be first, then accounts receivable, then other current assets, fixed assets, other assets. Those are all things we own. So assets are things we own. Then it will start with liabilities, which are amounts that we owe. Accounts payable, credit cards, current liabilities, including payroll liabilities, long-term liabilities if we have loans or mortgages, our equity in the company, and then we start with the income accounts. Income accounts, the reason we're in business is to bring money in. In this case, they're doing construction income with some sub-accounts. They've got some reimbursement income. Then cost of goods sold. If you're in an industry that has cost of goods sold, not everybody has to have cost of goods sold. But cost of goods sold is just another form of expense. And then we have our expenses, and then we can have other income and other expenses. But these lists, if this chart of accounts is developed properly, it will then give us nice financial statements for our customer. So under reports, under company and financial, we can look at a profit and loss standard, okay? It always defaults to the current month. So remember, it's December 15th of 2023. This is an accrual basis report. So it's going to include anything we've invoiced for this month. So we've so far invoiced $51,000 in construction income, nothing in reimbursement income. We've incurred some cost of goods sold. We've incurred job expenses. So there's our gross profit after the cost of goods sold. And then it starts listing our expenses. So a profit and loss, we can pull various reports. So back to reports, company and financial, we have a profit and loss standard. I'm going to go down to profit and loss by class. So class tracking, I kind of alluded to it earlier. It's a way to segment your business or your company or your activities. So we can see this company right now, new construction is less income than remodel. And so we can see after cost of goods sold down here, gross profit, we've got a lot more gross profit on remodel than we do new construction. And then we can see that right now, all of our expenses are allocated to overhead, and we would probably then have to transfer that overhead depending on how we look at things for the company. But because the overhead's just all expenses. So overall, we've made 100 for this year to date, January 1 to December 15th. We have net income of 113,000. We can see the majority of that came from remodel, but we can see right now that we haven't allocated our overhead expenses to the new construction or remodel. So class tracking is it's just helpful if that's beneficial to what you're needing. Because again, at the end of the day, QuickBooks is a tool for us that should help us get our reports in an easier way by just clicking a few clicks rather than having to work real hard and add everything up. So it just depends on what you need at the end. So how you set up your data, we need to make sure that it's set up so at the end you can get the reports that you want that are going to be very, very helpful to you. Now QuickBooks has well over 100 different reports. I'll click on the report center. So every company and financial has several different tabs. So profit and loss, we can have a standard, we can have a detail, year-to-date comparison, previous year comparison, by job, by class, unclassified. So lots and lots of data here for you. I would tell you, if you are looking at reports in QuickBooks, no more than 10, okay? No more than 10. So a profit and loss, maybe a profit and loss by class. So there's a couple. With customers and receivables, the AR aging summary, who owes you money and who do you need to be calling? I'll run this report. Now this is a sample company, so again, not a lot of data out there, but if you have a lot of money in this over 90 column, you need to be calling those customers and asking for your money, okay? It's your money, you've provided a product or service, it's due you, call them and ask for it. But like I say, it's a sample company. So this is the third report I would recommend, the AR aging summary. Let's go down to vendors and payables. AP aging summary. This is money that we owe our vendors. So again, if we had a lot of money out here in the over 90, those vendors are probably going to be unhappy with us, and they're going to be saying, hey, when are you going to pay me? And a lot of times they will cut you off and put you on COD if you don't pay them. So you want to definitely keep up with your vendors, make sure that they're getting paid. So there's the fourth report. I'm going to go back to company and financial, and I'm going to go on down the list because we should have a balance sheet. So here's a fifth report, a balance sheet. It's a position statement. How much money do I have in the bank? About $68,000 today. Customers owe me around $92,000. I've got $200,000 total in current assets, including my bank and receivables. I've got fixed assets of $433,000. So overall, I have about $635,000 in assets. Things that we own, $635,000. As I go down and look at the liabilities, total liabilities, of that $635,000, $420,000 of it we owe to vendors, whether it be through accounts payable, whether it be through the credit card or payroll liabilities or the loans. We owe $420,000. The difference between those two is going to be our $214,000 in equity. So balance sheet is very, very important. I get to work in about an hour with a small business owner who's working on a loan, and the banker says, you need to pro forma balance sheet. And he says, I need a what? And the banker says, call Lisa and she'll help you out. So we're going to sit down and we're going to look at the business that he's going to buy. We're going to plug in his contract amount and bust it apart between the equipment and things that he's buying, put in the assets, we're going to put in his loan, and we're going to make him a pro forma balance sheet and walk him through that. So again, balance sheet's a position statement. So that's, I think we're up to about 5. If you're doing payroll, QuickBooks has some really good payroll summary reports, just depending, again, what are we looking for. Right now with the PPP loan out there, this payroll summary report will be golden. You should be able to put your 8-week time period in here, pull the report, and get the numbers that you need. And also it's going to provide backup for that PPP loan. Under banking, definitely reconciliation, previous reconciliation or reconciliation discrepancy. With any bank account or credit card in QuickBooks, they need to be reconciled. We're all human, we make mistakes, and we need to do that reconciliation. It's super important to have that. So I will kind of leave reports at that because I think we're getting pretty short on time today. QuickBooks does a great job, I said, as time permits, tracking and paying sales tax. If it's set up properly, you will absolutely love it. If it's not set up properly, you're not very happy, okay? Let me make a comment about payroll. If you are using payroll in QuickBooks Desktop, you have to pay for that as an additional charge with your QuickBooks. So you pay a fee and you pick which level of payroll service that you need. The various levels, different prices, but if everybody is set up, so your employees have to be set up first, and see, it's not happy with me because it's like, you don't have the most recent payroll set up. So you're going to set up your employees, and you've got to make sure that you have their name and their social, their address and contact information. You want to have their payroll information, so how often you pay them, how much you pay them, and if you offer sick or vacation pay, if you have any deductions coming out of their pay, or if you have any additions, you'll note that. Under their taxes button, you're going to have the federal and state W-4s for each employee, and you will put in on the federal tab the filing status they chose, their number of allowances, any extra. Under their state tab, you'll have their state worked, their state subject to withholding. You'll again have their W-4 information with their filing status and their allowances, and that needs to be set up for it to pull the proper amount out of their payroll checks. So if you have any issues with that, send me an email. I'll be glad to do a Zoom with you to help you out. So if I can go back and kind of sum this up, the flow of your data in QuickBooks is critical. If you follow the flow charts, the way QuickBooks has designed it, life is pretty good. If we get things out of order, QuickBooks, she can get a little upset with us. Our preferences are there to make our lives easier. And just remember that it's preference driven. So if you don't see something on your screen, but you're like, I need that, go to edit, go down to preferences, and go find that preference and get that set up, because it truly just makes your life easier. Your list that you use. So we have vendors lists who we buy things from, customers who we sell things to, employees if we are using the payroll in QuickBooks. We have our chart of accounts to build our financials. And last but not least, we have our item list, things that we're going to invoice customers for or potentially buy from vendors. We would have those set up on our item list. And it's super important that these items get set up properly. So if we purchase carpet, if we purchase it, it's going to go to job expenses, subcontractors. But when we sell it to a customer, the income account is going to be construction income, subcontracted labor income. So it's super, super important we get our list set up, we get our preferences set up, and we put the right date on transactions, and life is pretty golden with QuickBooks. So I want to be respectful of your time today. I know we got started a couple of minutes late. I would be happy to take any questions that you have. Feel free to email me later. However I can be of service, I want to help you out, and I'm open for questions.
I do have a couple of questions.
You betcha.
So on the QuickBooks, which one is more effective? Do you think the online or the desktop?
What are you doing with it?
My husband what he would be doing with it is putting in employees' information, because we would do payroll.
Okay.
We would also have vendors.
Okay.
We also will be printing out bills or
Okay.
receiving bills.
Okay.
So pretty much most of the things that you talked about is some of the things that we would be dealing with.
Okay.
But in a smaller scale.
Okay. Is he mainly a service business?
Yes, he provides service.
Okay. Do you want him to be able to invoice customers like when he is at their location to try to collect money from them?
Normally what he does is a monthly bill. He sends each customer a bill monthly.
Okay. So being a service business, QuickBooks Online would work nicely for you. I am just very partial to QuickBooks Desktop because it has more functionality.
Okay.
But service businesses, QuickBooks Online, and we have a training, I think, coming up very soon. One of my colleagues in the statewide network will be doing a QuickBooks Online training. It will work very nicely for your service business. QuickBooks Desktop is just my favorite because of the functionality. I personally, I like the payroll feature better in QuickBooks Desktop because it's more flexible and forgivable.
Okay.
So my contractor that I mentioned earlier that she had trouble pulling the report because some she had done invoices for and some she had done, or she had entered bills and some she'd just written checks. She's in contracting. So the payroll portion for her is not forgivable. If you make a mistake, because it's online, it's very, very difficult to correct it. With QuickBooks Desktop, much easier to correct it if there is a mistake because it's much more forgivable. And the other thing she's run into, because she's in the contracting area and she has to deal with workers' comp audits every year, her workers' comp guy made the comment, "Oh my goodness, I love this payroll report that you gave me." And it's because it's a QuickBooks Desktop report. So the reports are just a little more robust, but if you need flexibility and need the mobile apps and things, and you could run QuickBooks on your phone, I would say QuickBooks Online. But like I say, I am just super partial to desktop. I am certified in online, but desktop is my favorite because it is much more flexible for you and forgiving.
Okay. Okay. Another question I have. So a lot of the information that you were presenting, my husband has put that in an Excel format. And
Okay.
if we were to get QuickBooks Desktop, is there any way that you can transfer that information to QuickBooks, or we would have to manually put all that in?
Okay. So QuickBooks lets you export and import lists, not transactions, but lists.
Okay.
So let's say in QuickBooks, you can go to File. So what I would tell you to do is I would tell you to set up one vendor in QuickBooks. If you purchase QuickBooks Desktop, set up one vendor. Okay. Then I would tell you go to File, go down to Utilities from the File menu, and choose Export. And you export the list to an IIF file. And I've got it on the screen. I think I'm still screen sharing.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So
Yes,
you're going to
I see
set up that one vendor and set up all the information. Then you're going to come here and you're going to say, export my list to IIF files. And I'm going to say, export my vendor list. Let's just do it. And I'm just going to call it vendors.
Okay.
Okay, let me see if I can pull up Excel. And then let me see if I can change my screen share to Excel. So what we would do then is we would pull up this export, and I'm not going to be quick enough to do it because I don't do it often.
Okay.
We would pull up this list, and I'm happy to do this with you. We just set up an appointment.
Okay.
And would screen share. You would see how the columns, the information, and we would just have to have you copy and paste your information into those columns. And
Hey, Lisa,
then
we're not seeing the Excel spreadsheet.
I know because I can't get it
Okay.
pulled up.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
I just want to make
No.
sure.
So then what we would do is we would, so you saw how easy it was to do File, Utilities, and Export.
Yes.
Once you have that export, you're going to add your other data of your other vendors to that file. And then we do File, Utilities, and Import. And we import that IIF file back into your QuickBooks, and all your vendors are there.
Oh.
So we can do that with your vendors, with your customers, and we
Okay.
could also do that if you had an item list that you needed. But first, we have to set up one of each and export those lists. And then, like I say, copy and paste your data into the columns, because QuickBooks has what's called the IIF file, and that's an Intuit interchange file. Intuit is the maker of QuickBooks. So this IIF file, then you come back around and do File, Utilities, and Import, and then your lists are there. But again, we can't do that with your transactions, only your lists. So customers, vendors, employees, and items would be kind of the big ones, I would say.
Okay. Okay. Do you personally, do you have classes or for QuickBooks, like something that lasts like 2 hours, 3 hours, or we can just call you, contact you if we were to get the QuickBooks and allow you to walk us through whatever we need?
Yeah, and that's part of what we do at the Small Business Development Center. We're educators for small business owners. So we would do I would do a one-on-one session with you. We would set up an appointment. We'll do a Zoom link, and I would actually be talking you through how to do it and teaching you how to do it in your QuickBooks.
Okay.
So,
and that includes like setting up what we need and things like that.
Yep, we're just gonna walk you through it and educate you on it. I used to teach a 6-hour like in-class computer lab workshop, but everybody uses QuickBooks differently because your data is what you need, and everybody else needs a little bit different information. It's all financial information, but the different reports you need and how you need to set it up, I help you customize that for your business.
Oh, awesome. Is there a fee to that?
There is not, because we're educators and you're doing all the work.
Okay.
I just get to be the coach in your ear. So if you can handle listening to me some more, send me an email.
Awesome. Can do that. Now that email that I send you from my confirmation email? Is that where I send it to, or is there a particular email you'll send me to send to you that I can email
Did
you?
you get a copy of the handout for today?
No.
Okay.
If I did, I'm not for sure. My internet was acting crazy.
Okay. Okay. So if you will message me, if you'll just send me a message with your email right now in the chat, I'll write it down and I'll get that sent to you so that you'll have my contact information.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions out there? I sure appreciate all of you today. I hope you picked up some things that are helpful. And if I can be of service, please let me know.
Okay. Are you Lisa?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and send you my email address.
Thank you. All right. I see it. Well, that is all I have. If we don't have any more questions, I appreciate you all and look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much.